Good evening for those of you who are watching and those of you in the recording. I'm Avi Grossman. This is Parsha Talk. Tonight's guest is Rabbi Daniel Glatstein. He'll be with us in a few moments. We're just going to admit him. We go. If anybody has a problem, please send it to me in the chat. And also, for those of you who are having a problem getting the transmission, it's best if you kill your camera and also mute yourselves. So thank you very much. We're looking for Rabbi Glatstein. He's here with us, I think.
Okay, did I use the right?
Good afternoon, Rabbi Glatstein.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you, Rabbi Grossman, for the opportunity today. How's everything?
Oh, thank God. It's already Hanukkah here. I love Hanukkah. I don't know, since I was a kid. It's good. And I especially like it because it allows me to continue with my regular yeshiva schedule. It's not so much of an imposition. Also, I'm surprised how every year it becomes that I see more and more people are makbid for what I was taught is the proper way to light Hanukkah candles, to light at sundown. Most of my neighbors do so. I see people, even, thank God, those balabatim who are always hard at work. They always get home. They try to get home in time to light, specifically at sundown. I remember growing up, most people weren't makbid for that. And maybe you could tell me what's going on there in the New York area. Do people have that hakpada, or they're still lighting at Seis or any time in the evening?
Look, nowadays, Persumenisa is primarily for the people in the household. So until people get home from work, it ends up being well after Seis. But actually, Rabbi Moshe holds in America, you light something like between 13 and 18 minutes after Shkia, and Rav Aaron Kotler holds even later. So I don't know if there are any specific opinions to light at Shkia here in America, but most people come home from work at 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, until everybody gets home from school. So it could take a while.
I remember that was the case. I also remember in yeshiva, there wasn't so much of a hakpada. It only became something that when you start learning here on the Israeli side, there's always a Rosh Yeshiva who tells you, like, the first time before Hanukkah, we're gonna light right at Seis. Among the Sfardim, they say right at Shkia. And there's Sfardim here, they say we're light right at Seis 20 minutes after sundown makbid. And in the yeshiva days, I remember we were lighting at Mariv, sometimes 6:37. There was very little hakpada like the Yekis have to do at a very specific time. So. Right. It was a big surprise coming here, but now I guess I gotten used to that. First, I'd like to welcome everybody. Every minute someone else has been joining. This is Parsha Talk. This is the first time we're doing this on Zoom. Normally we use other methods or we just record it. So I'm happy that all of you are here. I think maybe we'll just use this as the new method. Rabbi Glatstein is the Rav of Machon Magid Harakia in Cedarhurst, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Right? That's one of the 5 towns. I don't know where the lines between the 5 towns are. So people tell me they're from Woodmere, from Cedarhurst.
They're actually, the lines are in through my backyard. Half of the property is Cedarhurst and half of it is Woodmere. And it depends for what. Depends whether it's postage or, there are different lines of demarcation. So I'm straddling, I'm Poisech al Shtei HaSeipim over here.
Okay. So welcome, Rabbi Glatstein. I'd like to also tell our viewers, Rabbi Glatstein has a new sefer out. It's called The Light and the Splendor. It's published by ArtScroll, and it's available on ArtScroll's website. And we're going to talk about it in just a moment. Rabbi Glatstein also put out a sefer about Rabbi Meir Baal Haness. It's called Elakah D'Meir Aneni. I think if you check out Rabbi Glatstein's website, which is Rabbi DG, that's RABBI, the letters D, letter G.com. And you can see the details there for getting Rabbi Glatstein sefer. Now he'll tell us a little about it. What is Elakah D'Meir Aneni about?
So Elakah D'Meir Aneni is it's a book many years in the work. It's about the Tana Rabbi Meir and primarily his shita that ben kach u'ben kach nikroim banim, that regardless of what a Jew does, they always retain their status as the children of Hashem. And it basically traces the machlokes between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda, because Rabbi Yehuda, of course, disputes this. Rabbi Yehuda is of the opinion that it depends how we act. If we misbehave, then we're not considered banim. If we behave properly, only then Hashem deems us banim. It explores the idea that we never paskin like Rabbi Meir, and the Rashba says this is the one exception in Shas that we paskin like Rabbi Meir. Why is this the exception? Where did Rabbi Meir get this shita from? Is this his own shita? Did he learn it from his Rabbi Akiva? Did he learn it from his wife Bruria, who is Reb Meir a Gilgal of, which may explain where this Shita comes from, and then utilizing the concept that we're Banu Lamakim in its ramifications nearly to every single mitzvah in the Torah, whether it's tzitzis, whether it's tefillin, whether it's coming of Mashiach, whether it's Tchias HaMesim, whether it's Bar Mitzvah, whether it's Chanukah. So it really is a principle that has far-reaching ramifications throughout Kol HaTorah Kula. So
You
there's
said
actually
it might be a
many.
Gilgul.
Yeah.
How would we know who is assuming there are such a thing? I know that there are some old school Rabbanim who are very much opposed, even though every morning I sit and I hear a shir on Shara Kavanos and Gilgulim of the Ari. How do we know who is a Gilgul of who? How can we possibly know, even with regards to great personages, famous Tanoim, for example?
You're telling me Eliyahu Hanavi never came to you to tell you who is a Gilgal of who? I'm surprised about that, Rabbi Grossman. No, but all
Actually,
kidding aside.
yeah, I'll tell you the truth. My wife has met, in her zechus, we have encountered Eliyahu Hanavi twice. He was at our Vort, and he was there to tell us about the purchase of our house just a few years ago. So we've had that experience, but I don't know how I would know if he wouldn't tell me. How does anybody know about these things?
Look, a Gilgulim is not something that anybody can make up, but as you mentioned, you would have to go to the very legitimate sources on the subject, namely the Arizal and the Shar HaGilgulim, the Ramami Pano in his Sefer HaGilgulim.
Okay.
And sometimes the Yalkut Ruveni will bring early Kabbalistic sources. So in this case, when it comes to Reb Meir, the Yalkut Ruveni brings from Kadmoine Mikubalim that Reb Meir was actually a Nitzutz, which is slightly different than the concept of Gilgal, of the Malach Metatron, who is the one who records the merit of the Jewish people. So the commonality between Metatron and Reb Meir, by the way, an interesting thing is the word Metatron is memtes, which corresponds to that which the Gemara says about Reb Meir. The Reb Meir could come up with 49 ways to permit a sheretz and 49 ways to aser. So that's one of the clues that Reb Meir is connected to the Malach Metatron. And as Metatron was the Safra Rabbah, he is the great recorder of the merit of the Jewish people. What greater merit could somebody defend the Jewish people with than what Reb Meir did, that we're always the children of Hashem? So there are certain commonalities between Reb Meir and the Malach Metatron, but that's a minor aspect of the Sefer.
What would you consider a major aspect of the Sefer that readers should know about?
Oh, my favorite chapter is Perek Yud Gimel. And so, Rabbi Gross, you live in Kochav Yaakov, right?
Yes.
So, how far are you from Tiberia?
Well, I haven't driven there lately. I think it's a 2 hour drive on a good day north of here.
So interesting piece of information, and I think many are not aware of it. And the truth is, it's an explicit Gemara in Rosh Hashanah. You know, where will Mashiach reveal himself?
Well, they said that there's an idea that at the same place where the Sanhedrin last convened.
Oh, good.
And it would be up in Tiberia, around those areas. If it's the old city, there's Tiberia. The modern day Tiberia has greatly expanded beyond classical Tiberia. It's now already including other towns that the Tanoim were familiar with. But yes, around there.
Actually, one of the tour guides who writes in one of the publications, Ephraim Schwartz, he just messaged me that the Shloh HaKadosh started a shul in Tiberia, where their legend has it that Arizal was. And then it turned into a Greek Orthodox church, and he was writing a whole essay on the connection between Tiberia and the Greeks and Hanukka. Okay, but the Gemara does say that the last stop of the Sanhedrin and the last stop of the Shechina was Tiberia, and the Gemara says Misham Asidin Ligoel. That's where we're destined to be redeemed from. So an interesting thing, that means Mashiach will reveal itself in Tiberia, even though the Zohar says Mashiach will reveal himself in the Galil. The Chida sort of asks this stira between the Zohar and the Gemara, and the Chida says, well, Tiberia is in the Galil. The Zohar is giving a more general area, and the Gemara is discussing a more specific location. So, and why would that be? Why would Mashiach, of all places, reveal himself in Tiberia? And there's an amazing idea espoused by the Sefer Emes Liyaakov, written by Rabbi Yaakov Sha'altiel Ninyo, one of the early Mikubalim, and it's quoted by the Ben Yehoyada. He says that for Mashiach to come, all the nations of the world and all the instigators are going to say, what? These people, they do X, Y, and Z. They're no better than us. Whatever averos we do, the Jews do. And the Rebbeinu Shalom doesn't really have a good teretz other than the fact that I'm redeeming them because they're my children. They're my. So the question is, but the Ummah Yisrael, what do you mean they're your children? But Rabbi Yehuda holds that when they don't do the will of God, they're not your children. So God's going to have to say, I don't know, halacha Rabbi Meir. So there's a law in Shulchan Aruch that if you're the muchzak, if you have the presumptive status of something, you could claim kimli, meaning, very nice, you hold like Rabbi Meir, I hold like Rabbi Yehuda. So the Goyim will say, look, we have the Jews. We have them in America. We have them in England. We have them in a lot of places in the world. And we're holding on to them because we hold like Rabbi Yehuda.
Okay.
So God has to come up with the following ploy. We got to go to a city where we definitely paskin like Rabbi Meir. Now, where do we paskin like Rabbi Meir? Where he's the Marda Asra. So the Emes Yaakov says in Tiberia, where Rabbi Meir lived and flourished and is buried, and he's the Marda Asra, there it's Nimnu v'gamru ben kach nekra banim, and there God could bring the Mashiach, and nobody could stand up to that. So
there's a concept. The Sephardic Rabbanim here in Israel, especially Rabbi Ovadia Yosef, used to say the Beis Yosef is the Mar Da'asra of Eretz Yisrael. Still today, even though you can make this claim, a living posek has to be around in order to address current questions. So there, Mar Da'asra of years past wouldn't count, but this is a raya. You're saying even though Rabbi Meir has passed away almost 2,000 years ago, he is still there. So he's still the Marda Asra, and he'll still be the Marda Asra, God willing, soon when the Mashiach has to be revealed. That's a very interesting concept.
Yeah, that's the concept of Mashiach. Yeah.
I was always surprised also going to Tiberia, finding that the Rambam, who had written that you're not supposed to certainly pray at even the graves of tzaddikim and Talmidei Chachamim, and you're not even supposed to put matzevas, you're not supposed to put monuments on their graves, is buried right there next to the Shlah. He was buried first, but it's a big, well-known place that people visit, and it's certainly, I think history and the Klal Yisrael have shown that they don't hold like the Rambam in this regard. It showed that even the Rambam, with his power as the most held of posek since the last 1,000 years, even Rabbi Meir trumps the Rambam. Rabbi Meir, who was outvoted many times in his own lifetime. So everybody that I now have to get
you
a copy.
Mentioned Rabbi Gross, you mentioned the Rambam's kever. I believe the Rambam's father is buried next to him as well over there, and the Rambam's father has a sefer Hamaimon, and there are actually footnotes on that sefer by Rabbi Yehuda Leib Maimon, who is an interesting personality.
Yes.
And there he writes one of the reasons why this is the exception in Shas that we paskin like Rabbi Meir against Rabbi Yehuda. He writes very interestingly. Typically, Rabbi Meir is known as the Tanakama. He's usually quoted first. In this machlokas between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir in Kedushin Lamed Vav, he's brought second, to indicate that he has the final word on this subject. So that's a chidush of the Rambam's father. Yeah.
Okay, Rav Maimon. We don't. Someone said. I remember a joke. The fellow who was the Makoshish Eitzim was the father of Benos Tzlavchad. So the father of the Rambam, the father of Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon, is the father of the Rambam. It's Maimon himself. I need to ask you about Hanukkah, though. Like I mentioned to our viewers, you put out a sefer recently, The Light and the Splendor. This one, Elakad Meir, is in Hebrew. It's a more classic sefer, and The Light and the Splendor is by ArtScroll, so it's in English. And not only is it about Hanukkah, I guess the light refers to Hanukkah, and the splendor refers to Tu B'Shvat. Tell me something. This sefer on Hanukkah, when did it come out, and why should I? Well, I know I should read it, but how would you convince someone who's not interested to read it?
Well, Rabbi Grossman, the reason why you need to buy it, because if you want me to promote your sefer on the Haggadah, we have to have it has to be two ways over here. By the way, I really enjoyed your sefer, and for those watching, who usually listen to my shurim, I gave an entire shir on Rabbi Grossman's sefer on Haggadah HaPesach.
Yes.
And this is not even part of the deal. I don't have to be promoting Rabbi Grossman's sefer.
Look,
but I did
don't
enjoy
have
it.
Art scrolls around here. I don't know of a single English book in this Sephardic Israeli Kollel. And like I said, I haven't been to bookstores in a really long time. The bookstores that are supposed to be carrying Haggadah Pesach here in Israel were closed, and every day they're threatening us with more closures. I hope I'll be able to get to a Svarim store soon. I'll probably have to go to Manny's for the Light and the Splendor. Correct? Were they
I would
carrying it?
assume so. Yeah, yeah. But it's
Okay.
available in Israel. A few people told me they've purchased it. Now
Yeah.
it's interesting. The Light and the Splendor. I always debate what should I focus on: writing in Hebrew, writing in English. Who should I be catering to? Are there more Jews who read Hebrew Sfarim? Are there more Jews who read English Sfarim? And surprisingly, over the last 24 hours,
Yes.
I got calls from two very well-known, renowned Rabbanim in America, in New York, actually. And they said they really enjoyed the Sefer. Maybe one of them, I'll say who it was.
Okay.
And I said, oh, you mean Hanukka Meir? They said, what? What's that? They said they were talking about the art scroll.
Oh, wow.
So actually, I'll tell you the truth. Sfarim have special hashgacha process. I don't know if this Rav is going to want me to publicize his name, but let's just say he's one of the biggest Talmid Chachamim in America.
Good. Baruch Hashem.
And now, I'm not going to say that he went out and he bought the art scroll book in the store, but what he told me, he happens to be not well, and he's not able to sleep at night. And
Right.
He found himself in an apartment without any svarim except for the Light and the Splendor. So I guess Eliyahu Hanavi delivered it to him. He called me up last night. He said, "Why didn't you respond to my email?" I said, I didn't get your email. He said, I wrote an email and I have 3 corrections to make on the Light and the Splendor. I said, the Rav read the Light and the Splendor. So he told me he was stuck somewhere here and he was up at 1 a.m. He read the whole Sefer from 1 to 4 a.m. So that's an example of, you never know who you're going to reach. Actually, the other Rav told me he prefers the English because it's just easier to read. Even someone who's a very big Talmud Chacham, even someone who's well-versed in Shas, an American who grew up in America, you think in the English language. I mean, Rabbi Grossman, I assume you were born in America.
Yeah.
So I know you're fluent in Hebrew.
Well, thank you.
But when you think, you probably still think in the English language. That's my assumption.
Yeah, but I found it since moving here. It depends on the topic. Ironically, very ironically, when I have to write about Hebrew grammar, of which I do a lot, and also I have to promote this for the guys. I'm giving one of these Zoom classes in Hebrew next week. When I have to write about Hebrew grammar, I prefer English. Or writing about history, I prefer English. But I don't know. I found that for certain things, certain Talmudic ideas, it's actually better to write in Hebrew. But then again, I could figure that certain ideas, certainly Art Scroll is not compendiums of Talmudic pilpul and halachic analysis. So I also, if Art Scroll were to approach me to do something, I probably would write in English because that's how I think. I can't separate myself from that.
So, I would have thought that the art scroll would cater to more unlearned audience, and I'm finding that it doesn't discriminate. I'm finding even the most learned people, in a way, they have a preference to the English. And actually, the 2 Sfarim are written in very different styles. The English is just a smooth read. It incorporates one of the inyanim that I believe in very strongly is that when you give a shir or you have a presentation, don't just say the Chassam Sofer says. I want people to see the Chassam Sofer inside. I want people to see the words, learn it themselves, take a degree of ownership over it, see what he says, what I'm gleaning from him, and how I'm understanding him. So I always cite sources. To me, I think it's a crime when people speak and they say, it says in the Sfarim. Which Sfarim? English Sfarim, Jewish Sfarim, Judaism, other religion, which Sfarim I know the Sfarim HaKadosh, but I want to know where, what page, what edition, and I'll see for myself if it actually says it. So in the English, I cite every source, but the source and what I'm trying to do with the source is woven together. However, in the Hebrew, I adopted the style from Rav David Kohen, the Rashiva of Hebron, and in his Sfarim, he quotes the passage of the Makar verbatim, even in a slightly different size and font, so you could see this is what Rav Cohen is doing, this is what the Chassam Sofer says, this is what he's gleaning from it, So in the Hebrew, it's not as smooth of a read because there's an introductory sentence, there's the makar, and there's what I take from it. But you're able to learn it in depth, and actually it allows you to learn the Sefer in two ways. And this is how I personally learn Rav David Cohen's Svarim. Sometimes I want to see what's Rav David Cohen doing with what's his binyan, what's he trying to create. And sometimes I don't have time for that. I want to see what are the different sources he brings, and I'm not even going to read what he does with it. So this sefer could be read the same way. You could open up a chapter, and you could say, okay, what's Glatstein doing here? How's he weaving everything together? Or forget the author. I want to know what are the interesting Maramakoimos on Rav Meir on the subject of Hanukka. What are the interesting Maramakoimos on Rav Meir on the subject of Rav Meir's possible yahrzeit, which, by the way, even though traditionally in Israel and all over the world, Rav Meir's yahrzeit is commemorated on Pesach Sheni, but the Ben Ish Chai writes, and Rav Chaim Falaji writes, that one should light a ner le'iloi nishmas Rav Meir on Rosh Chodesh Teves, on Chanukah. And there's many who theorize that Rav Meir's yahrzeit, in fact, is not on Pesach Sheni. In fact, the Steichemet says that it was made up, that his yahrzeit is on Pesach Sheni. See, what happened was Jews would come to Eretz Yisrael for Pesach, and they would stay till Shavuos, and they would have nothing to do in between, so they visited the Rashbi on Lag BaOmer, and they're pumping money into the economy in Meron. And Tiberia says, you got to support us. So Meron said, why, what do you have to offer? So they said, we have Rav Meir. They said, okay, but Rav Shimon Bar Yochai has a yahrzeit. What about Rav Meir? They said, you could visit Rav Meir even if it's not his yahrzeit. They said, it will never go. You need an excuse to go. So they said, why don't you come on the way to the Rashbi? So they said, well, if they come to Rav Meir, people are going to think it's his yahrzeit, and they're not going to say Tachnun, so we can't have that happen. So he said, no problem. Let them come on Pesach Sheni. There's no Tachnun anyway. And the Steichemet said that's how it developed. But there's no basis that that's Rav Meir's yahrzeit. So the question is, so when is Rav Meir's yahrzeit? So there is an interesting sefer by somebody, Rav Pinchas Zavichi, who suggests that Rav Meir was born on Chanukah. That's how he got the name Meir. So in all probability, he was nifter on Chanukah because Tzadikim Hashem is memale shnoiseim mishana l'shana. And that's probably why the Ben Ish Chai says to light a ner on Rosh Chodesh Teves Leila Nishmas Rabbi Meir Baal Haness. And he didn't want to disturb the economy of Tiberia where people were going on Pesach Sheni, so he just said light and air, but he didn't want to burst anyone's bubble and say it was his yahrzeit, but his real yahrzeit is Rosh Chodesh Teves.
Interesting.
So that's also interesting side subject that's delved into in the Sefer. Yeah.
I need to give a word from our sponsor. My father reminds me that his own father's yahrzeit is Pesach Sheni. This is in memory of my grandfather, who did pass away on Pesach Sheni, and my great-grandfather, whose yahrzeit is tonight. Also, this is in his memory. So that's our connection.
Wow.
We have two yahrzeits. We have one Pesach Sheni and one tonight, and they're both my ancestors. I need to ask you about your book about Hanukkah. You told me about the style in there. What interesting new ideas, aside from, of course, we're going to be reading it, so we can't get every idea there, but what could you share with us from the book tonight?
Regarding the Yom Tov of Hanukkah.
Yes, please.
Well, the Reb Meir commonly prayed, Elokad Meir Anini, the God of Meir answer me, which is problematic. How could you say the God of Meir? God doesn't associate with any one tzaddik in their lifetime. That's a question of the Marsha. And the Marsha in the second answer says, Rabbi Meir did not mean him, that God is the God of Meir. He meant the God that illuminated the Jewish people in the times of Hanukkah. He should always answer us. So we see Reb Meir had a particular connection with Hanukkah because he was always invoking Hanukkah. Let the God who lit up our eyes in the times of Hanukkah, please help us out. So the connection between Reb Meir and Hanukkah seems to be very clear because, interestingly, a very important observation in the tefillah of Bimei Matisyahu, which it's certainly of note, who wrote that tefillah? Bimei Matisyahu ben Yochanan Kohen Gadol. The Rishonim write, the Roikeach, the Kolbai, that it was written by none other than Yochanan Kohen Gadol. It has 125 words, Gematria, Yochanan. And
Wait, Yochanan Kohen Gadol, we mentioned Matisyahu ben Yochanan. We're not talking about Yochanan Kohen Gadol, the one who is the father of Matisyahu. We're talking about Yochanan Kohen Gadol, the one who instituted, for example, Demai and other takanas, correct?
When we talk about who wrote this tefillah?
Yeah, because there's a number of men who are Yochanan Kohen Gadol. There, after the Maccabean time, Matisyahu was, his son was Yehuda, and the Yehuda's four brothers, obviously, and one of them was Yochanan. But he eventually, like unfortunately, like the other brothers, he fell in battle, and it was Yochanan Hyrcanus who officially was Kohen Gadol in the next generation, also the first Maccabean ruler of that generation. He's sometimes called Yochanan Kohen Gadol. Is it a reference to him or someone else?
So there's a big dispute about that
Okay.
between the Gra
Yes.
and the Hasidim,
Oh boy.
actually.
Okay.
I believe the Gra says, because the Gemara says that Yochanan Kohen Gadol served for 80 years with Kahuna Gedola, and then he went off. So
Okay, so it
who
must
went
be
off? Was that the father of Matisyahu, or was that the son of Matisyahu,
okay, or the like I said, the
or
grand.
somebody later?
Yeah.
Or somebody later. So the
Okay.
Gra learns it was the son of Matisyahu, but in the Olam HaChasidus they say it was the father of Matisyahu.
Very interesting.
And yeah,
But he can't be the one who wrote the Al Hanisim, the Matisyahu ben Yochanan Kohen Gadol. It had to have been a later Yochanan. He can't be writing about his own son, right?
I think it's also a matter of dispute who exactly the Yochanan was.
Okay. Either way,
whether it was
go
a
on,
father
go
or
on.
son. Yeah. So if you look in the terminology there, it says al amcha Yisrael. Ula amcha Yisrael asisa teshua gedola uforkan gemazeh. V'achar kain bo'u not amcha Yisrael. V'achar kain bo'u banecha. Why? The idea is one of the principles that the Yevanim tried to uproot was the notion that we are the children of Hashem. And the Chida writes that's why they tried to be Mavatel, Chodesh Mila, and Shabbos, which are mitzvahs that demonstrate we are children to Hashem. For example, we know that Goy Shabbos Chayiv Misa, a Gentile that observes Shabbos, is liable to the death penalty because Shabbos is the scepter of the king. Somebody who takes God's scepter, the scepter of the king, he's a Morid B'Malchus. Only God's child is entitled to observe the Shabbos. So Shabbos demonstrates we're a child to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So Yevanim try to be Mavatal that, and upon the restoration of these mitzvahs, it's specifically V'achar Kain Bo'u Banecha. So this is something very connected to the Shita and the opinion of Rabbi Meir, where that's really his worldview. That's his outlook on life, that Ben Kach Ben Kach Nikram Banim.
Wow. And I never thought of it that way. I never even considered. I figured like most texts that we say within Shemona Esrei, I used to believe that it dates to the time of Anshe Knesset Agadola. But since then, Rav Ariel, who's the head of Machon Mikdash, and others have enlightened me and shown that the Anshe Knesset Agadola certainly couldn't have written the Al Nisim because they preceded the Hanukkah miracle. And the rest of the texts of Shemona Esrei, they did not actually establish the text, but just the order of the brachas. What points need to be addressed in every bracha. But the actual text was something that was far more fluid. And actually, now they dig up in Genizas all over the place, texts that you and I have never seen before. For the brachas, things that are completely unrecognizable. We're familiar with let's say, the difference between the Ashkenazic and the Sephardic Siddur. You've seen them. You can pick one up. You open up. You see that there's a difference in the Shemona Esrei.
Right.
These texts that they're digging up and finding and reintroducing to at least the I wouldn't say the academic world because these are people in the base matters looking at these. They're finding texts for Bonei Yerushalayim and Lamalshinim and Rifa'enu, all the brachas with which we are familiar, even the ones on Shabbos. The Shabbos brachas. We have four different Shemona Esreis on Shabbos, four different openings to those brachas, even though they all end the same. They have many more of those that we've never seen before. So I wouldn't be surprised if there was other texts of Al Nisim, but this is something I haven't seen. I've only seen a slight difference. The Sephardic version is only slightly different, but among all these texts they're digging up, we don't find that many different ones of Al Hanisim for Hanukkah. That'd be very interesting to know who finally wrote this. This Hasidic idea is actually quite fascinating to me. I'd like to see it. Rabbi Glatstein, I'm sorry we're running out of time, but I have to thank you very much. And I have to remind everybody, especially those who came in, that they could once again, you have a number of books. Like we mentioned, Elokad Meir Aneni, that's at your website. And
Yeah,
The Light and the Splendor on Hanukkah and Tu B'Shvat is available at the Art Scroll website, correct?
correct.
And
Yes,
you have a series also, Magid Harakia series. I have one
right.
of your Svarim. I think there was a number of Svarim under that title. Am I correct?
There are a few svarim on this on Pesach and on Purim. So
Okay, so
those
it's
are all,
so you have on
yeah.
Pesach, Purim, and the Hanukkah and Tu B'Shvat one is not part of the series. And are there more on the way?
So Be'ezus Hashem, look, there's the Hebrew Lakota Meranini,
Yes.
and in English you have Chanukah and Tu B'Shvat, as well as on the Yom Noraim and Sukkot, called the Mystery and the Majesty.
Okay.
And we're currently working on a sefer on Bereshis in Lashon HaKodesh.
That's a
The
pirush
ti-
on the book of
it's
the Torah.
essays, varied essays on the Parshios, discussing important principles and themes of Sefer Bereshis. That's in Lashon HaKodesh. And in English, working on something on Tisha B'Av and the 3 weeks.
So I
So,
could tell everybody that the books in English are available. Are they all available through Art Scroll?
so the English books are all available on ArtScroll, and all the books are available on the website.
Okay, good. So we have to check those out. We're gonna have to. I'm gonna put you on the spot now. We have to have you come back sometime before Tu B'Shvat now, which is going to
Oh,
be,
thank you.
I think a month from now, or and a little bit more than that. And I'd also like to thank you. Wish you a good Shabbos, Shabbat Shalom to all our viewers, and a happy Hanukkah. And
Thank you.
hope to see you sometime. Don't forget, everybody. You can't click the like button. There's no like on Zoom, I think. But don't forget, send in your questions or comments to me. And don't forget to share with your friends. If you know someone who needs the recording, please have them get in touch with me, and I'll try to make it available to them. And
I would like a recording.
you like recording? Fine. So just wait. After I get off here, we're going to try to package the recording and make it available to everybody. And like to wish you all a Shabbat Shalom and a happy Hanukkah for those of you who are already observing and those of you who are about to observe. Be well.
Okay, good Shabbos and
Um,
Happy Hanukkah, Shabbat Shalom, all the best. Thanks so much.
Be well.
All the best. Bye-bye.